Thanks so much for joining us again for our monthly FASD Awareness webinar. Tonight, by popular demand, we're welcoming back Maggie May. Maggie May has been one of the great advocates of FASD. She's one that actually, as I said, by popular demand, we get requested more for Maggie May than any other person on our webinars. And it's a real pleasure to bring Maggie May back. And it's no fluke, I might add, that Maggie May is so eloquent in her explanations of what it is like living with FASD. And as a result, she was invited to travel out. Well, I'll let Maggie May talk about this, but in a second, but she's one of the great advocates. She was financially supported to go out to Seattle to take part as an advocate of FASD at the main Seattle Conference 2024. And Maggie May, thank you so much for coming back. And can you tell everybody where you are at the moment as well?
Currently, I'm in the beautiful province of Vancouver.
Fantastic. And I was saying, when you came on, you look like a Laura Ashley advert here. It looks absolutely stunning. Look, part of a painting. So thank you so much for joining us again. Really brilliant. Can I just say, as to everybody in the group, what we're going to do, we're going to be covering a conversation with Maggie May throughout the course of this webinar, but I will be monitoring the Q&A. So please, if you've got any specific questions that you'd like to put to Maggie May, I will be monitoring those. I might not be able to cover all of them. We'll see how we go today, but I will be monitoring those. Please don't make them about don't put any names in there, nothing personal, but we will cover that, and I'll cover that in the questions anyhow. So in the meantime, Maggie May, tell us about your travels, because before you left, we were doing a training seminar, a series of training sessions that we were putting out on Eventbrite, and you came in and you were talking about the 8 executive functions, which was a big part of what we do in our training, and it's such a valuable part of understanding FASD. And one of the things I did just before we closed up each session, I said, and it was really one of the most impactful moments, it was, can I just say, everyone looks at Maggie May, and when she speaks, everybody thinks how eloquent, how composed you are. But it's really important to understand what goes in to the management of something as big as traveling to the other side of the world to take part in a seminar and then continue your travels. Can you start by telling us some of the real traumas that you have to go through to get there in the first place?
Oh, yeah. And I'm going to give a lot of credit to my parents, where I was freaking out about this trip 3 months before I was meant to take it. I was already panicking. What am I meant to bring? What am I meant to wear? Oh my gosh. And my parents had to constantly, Maggie, you've got time. I'm like, no, I need to buy clothes. I don't have enough clothes. I don't have the right clothes. Oh my gosh, I don't have business attire for a conference. And so my parents had to keep kind of bringing me back and be like, Maggie, we have 3 months, settle down. And part of it is with my anxiety. I like everything to be so organized and know everything. So I'm very much about ticking off boxes. And it works really well when you think about doing it that way. But then also part of my FAC is I left everything to last minute of, oh, actually, I don't have enough time to get everything done. Oh, gosh. So a lot of it was thinking I had everything under control. So I was very much trying to do this as independently as possible. So I was really trying not to include my parents, be like, no, it's fine. I've got everything organized. I know what I need to do. And then running to my parents about 2 weeks before, being like, I haven't done anything. I have a list, but I actually haven't done anything off the list. Help. And so there's a lot of anxiety brought up about that, which then brought in a lot of stress. And I think when you're planning these kind of trips, you forget that you still have everyday life to live before you leave. You still need to make sure your cats have enough food when you're gone. You still need to make sure, you're still doing your everyday chores. And I think in my case, I got very sucked up into it. Oh, I'm going to Canada. Oh my gosh, my brain was already in Canada and what I was meant to be saying and stuff. Instead of being like, no, I still have like 12 weeks. Should be focusing on making sure my room's tidy and making sure my cats have enough food and litter gets delivered on time when I'm not here.
Did you find that you were frequently having sleepless nights, worrying about it and concerns?
Oh yeah. Oh, I would wake up and like, oh my gosh, I haven't bought a swimsuit. And then, you know, going on Amazon, spend like 6 hours just scrolling, be like, ooh, or just having terrible dreams of, you know, I'm in an airport and I've never traveled this far solo, and you know, I got lost or I missed my flight and then I didn't know how to book a new flight, and then it was so there was a lot of taking me through the task very slowly, and I was harassing a lot of people who I knew had flown, be like, what do I do? You know, with your suitcases, are you meant to go and collect them from one carousel and bring them to another one? Because I'm getting 3 different flights in different airports. So then be like, no, Maggie, it's all taken care of. But really talking with other people who also have FASD, who have done lots of solo trips, to be like, what do I need to be aware of? You know, what are some potential obstacles that I haven't thought of that you might have come across, and how did you handle them? And just
so,
trying.
You know, because a lot of people on here might be families where they're looking at summer holidays and they're thinking, do you know what? We want to travel abroad, but can we risk this? What were some of those examples that you gleaned?
So for me, I used the sunflower lanyard, which there you go. Which is recognized in a lot of airports, which really just helped because it really, when I was overwhelmed of, you know, giving my boarding pass and my passport and freaking out because I couldn't find it because it was at the bottom of my handbag and the queue was getting long, they're like, it's fine, just take your time. A huge thing for me is I use airport lounges now, where I don't mind paying a bit of extra money, because for me, some of my layovers were 5 hours, and leaving someone with FASD in an airport with duty free for 5 hours is, I would have had no money left by the time I even made it to Canada, because I would have gone shopping. So I discovered airport lounges where, you know, you pay a bit of extra, but it's quiet. You can charge your phone. There's some food. It's just not overwhelming. It's very just,
out of it,
and yeah.
I have to say, you know, I completely agree. The 2 things that you mentioned there, I want to reiterate from our own experiences with my family. Recently, we took our foster son on one of his first ever flights abroad, and the police allowed him to travel for the first time as well, because he's the sort of individual that going through customs would have shouted bomb just because he knows he mustn't. And those are the traumas. We are anxious, let alone him. But going through that, having that lounge to be able to calm down and feel like, okay, now I can regroup. I've done this bit. I've got to the airport. I've got what I need to do now. I can regroup, calm down, and then move on. These are really important strategies, and those lanyards are an absolute godsend, because everybody recognizes them in an airport, don't they? You can always find somebody and say, could you help me, please? I need to, I've been fast tracked through this. This is my condition. And you can explain it, can't you?
Oh yeah. And even in the airports that don't recognize it, I usually go up and be like, look, I have a hidden disability. And usually they're just like, okay, this is where you go. You can go fast track, or, you know, I can be like, look, I'm really overwhelmed. And they're like, okay, what do you need? So even if you don't have your lanyard with you, most airports are really, as soon as you go up to check in, be like, look, I have a hidden disability. They're like, okay, what do you need?
So,
which is great.
I know, you know, you've traveled to a few countries. Give us a list of some of the countries you've traveled to, not just Seattle, but.
Okay, so coming here, so I went through Toronto to Vancouver, and then we drove from Vancouver to Seattle for the conference. And then I was invited to an FASD summit with a colleague of the ALC, CJ Lutke, to New Mexico. Albuquerque. So that one was Vancouver to Denver, and then Denver to New Mexico, which was really warm, really warm, really warm. I got very sunburnt. And then flying back, we did New Mexico to a different airport and then back. And then so I think the most I've done so far is like 2 different flights, or maybe 3 different flights in one go. And then I went to Ottawa to an event in Smiths Falls, and that was a few different flights as well. So it's definitely been a lot of airports. I love airports.
But also you're in a different room every night, or not every night, but frequently different rooms, different locations to your safe place. How does that feel? How have you coped with that? What sort of strategies have you put in place for that?
I am someone who does not really sleep in hotel rooms because it's just I think my hypersensitiveness just perks up where I can hear every door slamming, everyone walking up and down the halls. Hotel rooms are paper thin, so very often people have the TVs on. So what I usually do, I bring headphones, I bring my laptop, and I just end up putting on a TV show or watching something or just keeping my mind busy, and eventually I fall asleep. Coffee is a must-have. I annoy hotels because I'm often like, can I have extra coffee? And I'll just go through it and I'll go down and be like, yeah, I finished the coffee. Can I have more coffee? Because coffee is just one of those coping mechanisms I use.
So, we've talked about all of this so far. Let's go into what you went there for in the first place, which was the Seattle conference. Now, I met with Raja Mukherjee yesterday, and he said that he saw you out at the conference. He was out there with Gilbert as well, who we've had on here many times, and he presented a brilliant presentation, I understand. Now, you were very involved at the very beginning, weren't you, of the seminar, involved with the International Adult Leadership Collaborative, the Changemakers. Now, can you explain what was the Seattle conference about?
So it was on adolescents and adults and research. So the way this particular conference worked, it did used to be hosted in Canada, and then through funding and stuff and lack of funding got moved. And so FASD United very kindly found the funding for us to put it on again. And the unique thing about this conference is there's almost 2 conferences happening at the same time. You have the main conference, which is attended by researchers, doctors, parents, and then what the Adult Leadership Collaborative were most involved with was the second conference, which was just for people with FASD. So we had our own kind of separate conference, which was really the living experience perspective and research that people with FASD had asked to be looked into. And it was very much a space where they could embrace themselves and what the amazingnesses that come with having FASD. And it was a safe space where for the first time, a lot of them were able to open up about things that they cannot usually open up about.
Can you give us some examples of some of those?
Yeah, so there was just things like, some people had never even told anyone else they had FASD, or they didn't talk about some of the challenges they had because for them they felt like they couldn't. And because the adult stream, as it's called, is run and put on by people by the ALC who all have FASD, we're like, no, we know, we're the ones who live it. And very often what we say is that, if you want proper advice, and the best type of mentorship can only come from people with FASD to other people with FASD, because we're just an older version of them who have gone through the stuff. So we know what it's like. So there's no judgment. And what really makes this stream so important is it's closed. Parents can't come in. The only way you can get through the doors is if you have FASD, which means there's no judgment. There's no parents trying to push their ideas or what they think. It's no, this is a point where your teenagers, your adults can actually, open up and say, this is actually what it's like, or actually this is what I struggle with. Is this normal? And the conversations that come out of this stream very often leads on to huge research, because we're like, oh wow, okay, this isn't just a small thing. A lot of people are going, okay, this needs to be researched. And I think a highlight for me is we had about 100 individuals in that room, and the first day they came in, you see them all go to their little groups of start to form friendships, but they're still really shy, and so they don't really want to contribute. And then by the end of the 3-day stream, they're shouting it from the rooftops, and they're like, I'm proud. I'm embracing. Actually, it's okay. It's not a negative thing. Actually, I'm going to leave this conference, and actually, I'm going to start advocating for others like me. And I think that's what's so magical about this particular stream.
And it's something that, you've seen in a sort of a microcosm, if you like, with our own FASD awareness, our friendship groups. We've got people within those groups that have become amazing advocates, haven't they? And examples, trailblazers, if you like, in the UK for advocating for FASD. So, we're seeing more and more of this, and it's amazing that you're able to pass on that mantle, if you like, to the next generation about drawing a greater awareness of what it is like living with FASD. And as you point out, so important, it's not doom and gloom, is it? So
oh gosh, no.
What were some of the real positives that you gleaned from the conference?
A huge thing for me was at the very beginning, we kind of asked the entire room of adults and teenagers of how many of you think you are change makers? And maybe 5 people out of 100 people put up their hands. And by the end, we asked the same question again, and every hand in that room shot up of, actually, I am a change maker. The things I am doing, or even just telling people I have FASD, that makes me a change maker. That's me making a difference. That's me lending my voice. And I think that needs to be applauded, because it's not an easy thing to do for anyone to say, hey, actually, I'm not like everyone else. I have challenges. I'm not able to achieve the some things that other people can, and that's okay. Like you said, it's not doom and gloom. It's embracing
Absolutely.
that.
I remember it was about 4 or 5 years ago, you and I first met, and we exchanged emails, and we were talking, you were talking about how to promote your YouTube channel and, what techniques and methods would help with that. And actually, you look at your journey. We've just had a really interesting question here from Alice, who is an FASD adult. She said, I'm an advocate as an adult with FASD. Where do I start? What tips would you give her to advocate for FASD?
A huge thing for me is I found other people first. So I went onto Facebook and I found an amazing group, Flying with Broken Wings, which has everybody from anybody in it who has FASD to parents. It's run by RJ Formanek, who is also
RJ in the past, yeah.
Yes, we have the amazing RJ. And just start talking about your own experiences. That's where I started, where I remember the first thing, I was a lurker for years, and then a parent was asking about, oh, her son always wears a jacket. It's, blazing sunshine, 40 degrees outside, but he's still in a winter jacket. And she was just confused. And I was like, I do that too. And for me, it's a safety thing. For me, my jacket is like a safety blanket where I don't take it off if I don't have to. And she was like, wait a minute, that makes sense. Oh, okay, now I'm not going to fight him on it anymore. And that's where my first advocacy started of, oh, I help somebody. Okay, actually, I can be of use, or my experiences or my insights can be useful. So actually, and that's where I started years ago, of just started answering questions of, well, this is why I do this. I'm not saying that's why your child or your teen or your adult's doing it, but this is maybe the reasons I do it might be helpful. So really start small.
And also, join our FASD friendship groups for a start, because that's where you're meeting others and being able to collaborate. And also, as Maggie May hosts those groups as well. You can ask advice, you can get involved. And, you know, there are many opportunities. You know, we're not the only organization up and down the country. You've got my FASD group as well with the national organization. You've got other charitable organizations up and down the country that all look at supporting FASD and the FASD community. So, you know, part of the UK Alliance, if you want to go on to find out more, please just message us. If you go to our website as well, we have on our website places where you can sign up to joining any of our groups. It's a quick referral process, and you'll meet up with Maggie May on there. And we have people from all over the world, don't we? Explain some of the people that we've worked with on there.
Yeah, we've had people from the States, Canada, Wales, the UK, Scotland, Ireland. And I think what's really nice is some people think, oh, it's just in my country. Whereas when actually we all get talking, we're like, wait a minute, we all go through some of the same issues. And, you know, some of us, doesn't matter what country you live in, there's no resources. So how do people with FASD combat that? You know, if there aren't any resources, where can we make our own resources? Or, you know, if we don't have funding for things, where can we get supports? For me, I'm someone who built my own community internationally. So I have people in different countries who I will go to because they're the ones who can give me the best advice for certain situations. And it's very much sometimes you need to build your FASD family from different countries, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I know when we had RJ Formanek on, he was talking about once he got that diagnosis, he looked to find the community. He wanted to understand more because all of a sudden there was a eureka moment for him that it was an explanation for his lifetime of behaviors, but also he wanted to be able to find others that understood. And this is what, you know, you've just been explaining. But I love the fact that you've made this community, international community of friends, and yet you meet them for the first time in Seattle. Tell me about that experience. How did that feel?
That was amazing. So, you know, I've worked with them for some of them for 4 or 5 years, and we've never met in person. And as it has grown, I think there's now about 17 members. You know, organizing this conference, we'd be having Zooms twice a week for 3 hours ago sometimes. So we really had formed this really online, great friendships, relationships, and everything. But that was only online. So, you know, sometimes online and in person are two different things. So it was really amazing to actually see in person. Just, it was like we'd always known each other. It was just like, wait a minute, you're not flat. You actually are, you're a real person. You're not just a flat screen. This is weird. And there was a lot of, this is weird that you're here in person because I've only ever seen you like flat screen. Okay. But once we got over that, it was amazing to see the friendships just transferred from screen to person. It wasn't any issues. And I think it was just like, oh my gosh, it was a really historical moment, I think, for the ALC because we've worked for years and some of us had never met. So to meet them finally in person, all together from 7 different countries. Some of the ALC had never been on a plane before. So for them to travel from one country all the way to another country was huge. And just the friendships, and it really just bonded us even further and kind of really cemented that actually we're all in it for the right reasons. The ALC is going to be there for many generations to come.
Yeah. And it's lovely seeing that journey as well of discovery from many of those that organize these events, to be able to see what is needed, why we need to have that. You know, we've always said that a big part of our training is to involve the lived experience, or you like to call it the living experience.
Yeah.
Because actually that's, as you've just said, this is where you get the greatest insights and information. So absolutely brilliant. What I'm interested next in understanding is, what were the key areas where they needed more research following from your discussions? Did you feel that the professional clinical or clinicians and experts, what did they get from what you were saying that they felt were needed to be researched in greater depth?
That is a great question. I think a lot of us were very, we often give a lot of suggestions of, hey, why do people with FASD look so much younger than our actual age? So very often we'll just come out with like 400 different suggestions, and then we kind of wait and see which ones get picked up and which ones don't. So it's often a roulette. We're given a few tasks, which I cannot remember the name, so I'm not going to bother even trying to pronounce it. So I'll email you that and you can add it on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try. To potentially do a third lay of the land survey, which would be very exciting because at this conference we launched the second one, which had been done a few years previous, the research and everything, but because of COVID, we couldn't announce the results. And that went down very, very well, where I think a lot of what we had been put out in the research that the ALC had done, people were starting to discover it themselves in their research of actually quality of life is an issue. And it really did highlight how vulnerable adults are and the vulnerabilities that very often get overlooked by services and resources. And I think it opened my eyes as just, if I was on a different path, how vulnerable and how my life could be so different at the click of a finger. It was quite.
This is something when we're really very clear, aren't we, in our training that we offer, that understanding the vulnerabilities, we talk about confabulation as well, and we talk about the vulnerabilities that we have in being able to, I know Gilbert's presentation was on interrogative suggestibility and confabulation and compliance, finding from experimental studies. That was his speech and his talk. And that all in that suggestibility, confabulation and compliance, three major areas of vulnerability. And you talk about that as well when we do our presentations. And one of the things that we really try and tell social workers, GPs, community pediatricians, adoptive families, everybody connected within the care system as well. We try and say to them, look, if you understand that individual and you put them at the center of your plan, then you get that management plan, you get that scaffolding that supports that individual and leads to positive outcomes. Now, you've just said there, before you left, your parents and that support network around you, you get out to Seattle, you've got a massive support network around you. And it's about understanding that for everybody involved with FASD. Is that something that you would agree with and what you found?
Yeah, I definitely think that a lot of supports were needed. At the conference, the ALC had A to Z of, if this happens, this is what we're going to do. If this happens, this is what we're going to do. We all had kind of behind the scene roles of, hey, if there's a meltdown, then these three members will go and help this person work through it and stuff. And so there was no meltdowns at this conference. And I think that was also, 100 people, different ages in a room, and there wasn't a single meltdown over 4 days. That's
why do you think that was?
I slept under a table. I crashed at one point and I just went under a presentation table, and I wasn't presenting and I just went to sleep. But I think it was very unique we were able to read a meltdown before it even happened, before the even individual knew they were about to have one, so we could intervene of, hey, let's change the subject, or hey, look, we're going to go to the back room. And what we had put in place was there was fidgets on every table. There was big drawing where people could just draw. If they didn't want to communicate, they could write stuff down. And we got some amazing artworks out of it. But also, what I loved in particular is we just went with the flow of the room. We had some topic ideas that we planned to talk about, but if it wasn't going down well in the room, we just switched out. We're like, what do you want to talk about? What is some stuff you want us to address? Or, hey, what stories do you want to share? And so it was structured, but it wasn't structured. It was structured without the individuals knowing the structure was there. So we're like, you can come and go. You don't have to be here for the whole day. If you want to just come in and out, that's fine. If you don't want to say anything, that's fine. If you want to say stuff, that's fine. If you want to just be there and be on your phone and play games, that's okay. If you want to be at the back of the room playing with fidgets and just having fun, that's okay. We were like, you just go with the flow. But the ALC had put in structures of, okay, you know what? If this room, we're going to go with it. But if someone needs to be taken out or if someone needs to just chat, then you go with them. And we just keep the flow going.
And of course, that's something that you've always done. You've always done that. I've observed you in the room with people. You monitor when people are beginning to trigger, or you control that situation. So your feedback to others to be able to say, look, this is the behavior. This is what we're trying to teach teachers in schools, teach parents, the first-time adoptive parents or foster families, that all of a sudden they're presented with these behaviors and having to understand them. You're talking about strategies that an entire room understands, and you know how to monitor that, what to look for, and also you had no meltdowns. This is a big deal, actually.
Yeah.
When you're looking at 100 people with FASD in a room, there's almost a joke there, I would imagine, somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
There's 100 people in a room, all got FASD, but you created a space where this is a big deal. I really think this is amazing. So, well played to everybody involved in organizing that. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think therein is a huge lesson for everybody to take away with them. And you can use that as a template, as a model for managing behaviors and understanding how to manage situations with adults and young children with FASD. Absolutely brilliant. So tell us a little bit more about where you went after Seattle. So, you had a great experience in Seattle. Before I take you on that one, sorry, I'm going to jump back up for a second, because I wanted to ask you, were there any individuals that you met that didn't have FASD that you really wanted to meet, that were part of the clinicians or part of the FASD professionals that you'd heard about that you wanted to meet and you met in person?
I had the honor of meeting Joanne Weinberg, who is over right here, is a huge name, and a lot of individuals owe so much to her. I got to meet Judy Cable, who is doing amazing research. I got to meet Raja, which was definitely awesome because I followed his work, and our paths have crossed quite a lot online via Twitter and on Zooms, and so it was amazing to be able to meet him in person and just have a really good discussion. Got to meet Gilbert, which he's really tall, very tall. I met him once before in Manchester, but I'd forgotten how tall he was.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. And I think there were so many huge names, but they were what I love about is they're very humble. They're very down to earth. It wasn't a big deal. I did get the pleasure of meeting FASD, who is a great organization with lots of big names, where they generate a lot of funding that can go to different projects, which is where one of the projects that the ALC is involved in is the Health Coach, which we have helped develop with Rochester University and Christy Petrenko. And so that was amazing because we'd done a lot of online meetings with them over the years. And what was amazing was we didn't ask to meet them. They had requested to meet the ALC. They were the ones who were like, look, we know you're super busy, but we need to meet with you. We need to hear some ideas. We need to hear where research needs to go and where we need to put funding in so that the research can happen with the ALC's involvement. And that was a huge thing for me, is for once we weren't having to chase people. They were wanting to meet us. They were wanting to talk to individuals with FASD. They were, you know, and it's very rare. So for me, I'm so used to having to like send 20,000 emails of, hey, can I meet with you? Or hey, just so you know, whereas they're like, no, we want to meet with you. We will find a way to make it work on your terms. Whatever you need, we will do it. So that was amazing. And I'm really looking forward to a potential partnership coming out of that. But there was just so many big names there that it blew my mind, because I didn't even know half of how important these were until afterwards. And like, you met this person. I'm like, yeah. Like, no, you don't understand. This is the top of the top. But they're so nice.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's funny, actually. Raja and I were having exactly the same conversation yesterday. But also, I have to add that you became one of the biggest names of the conference. Is that correct? You were awarded. You were awarded an amazing award. Show it's right behind you there. Show it.
It is right behind.
Show it off. Go on. You've earned this.
Can't see it, but yes, I got the Starfish Award.
And tell us, what is the Starfish Award?
So the Starfish, and I will say it was presented to myself and another individual on the spectrum, Rebecca Tlu, because I was supposed to be the recipient before COVID happened. And so it is awarded to advocates who are making a huge difference in the FASD community through advocacy or research, or coming up with ways of, getting the word of FASD out there. So it was presented to myself as an individual, Rebecca Tlu as an individual, and then it gets presented to two professionals. So it was awarded to Dr. Brenda Knight and also Dr. Christy Petrenko for their contributions to the FASD research field.
I've got to say, you were in great company there, weren't you?
Yes, I was very much in great company. Let me
put it another way. They were in great company.
No, I was honored.
Yeah, and I know you feel very honored by it, but it was, I think everybody here would hold their hands up and applaud you for, exactly that, the great contribution you've put in. And it's so nice that it's been recognized as well. I'm delighted for you. So seriously, congratulations. So moving on, the next stage, you then continued to travel. Tell me about the next stage of your journey. What you continued to advocate, didn't you, and work with other organizations. Tell us a little bit about the rest of the stuff you've been doing while you've been out there.
So after Seattle, me and CJ were invited to a FASD summit in New Mexico, where we were keynoting, and we did a presentation on insidious stigma. And that's a very exciting, because they're trying to start something up from the bottom. And so to be invited to their first ever FASD summit was a great honor. And I met some amazing professionals who are really in it for the right reasons and who are really in it for the individuals, where they're like, no, we're not doing it for ourselves. We're doing it so that individuals have somewhere to go, and research is going to be there. So that was amazing. It was University of New Mexico who had actually invited us, and it was an amazing experience, I think, because there were some big names, but they really were so eager to hear what me and CJ had to say. And then from our presentation, a lot of presenters after us were like, nah, just what the girl said, pretty much. They've spot on, and they were very often referring back to our presentation. And I will say, me and CJ and Jan Lutke, who is the amazing manager of the ALC, we knocked our socks off, because we came back from Seattle, and the next day we were starting to put this presentation together from the ground up.
Jan actually was the chair of the conference as well, wasn't she? Yeah.
Yes, she was. And
wow,
we would be lost without Jan.
busy lady.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, you know, that's amazing. And then you've continued, haven't you? You've carried on from New Mexico. You're back in Canada again now.
I was back to Vancouver, and then RJ was doing an event in Smiths Falls, just outside Ottawa.
Yeah.
And I'd never met
Amazing.
RJ in person.
Yeah.
So I was like, look, I'm in Canada, potentially once in life. So it was an amazing FASD event where putting on by Rural FASD Network, where they had done a fun day, Red Shoes Rock Fun Day, where everyone wore red shoes and I wore red shoes.
They were
And it was
spectacular
all,
red shoes that you had on.
yes,
Oh, RJ
yes,
was very, very jealous.
yes. They're definitely red shoes to be noticed. And so the fun day was outdoors. They had so many different activities for all different ages. In the end, they had about 300 people turn up
Wow.
throughout the day, all with FASD and other disabilities. It was very inclusive. And I got to meet RJ, which was amazing. He's been my mentor for so many years, so it was amazing to finally get to see the amazing RJ in person and to discover he's just as amazing in person as he is online. And he rocked his red shoes, so that was pretty cool. And so I was there for a couple of days. I made some really great friends from it and heard so many amazing stories, and they're very similar to your own organization. Of they're not in it for themselves; they're in it for wanting to make a positive environment for individuals. And while I was there, we also did a TV interview, which was very fun, very unexpected. I was not prepared at all, but I had fun with it. So that was good.
Excellent. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you absolutely rocked that one too. Listen, before we came on air, we had this
Mhm.
conversation. And I know when you were talking to Tracy the other day, you were talking about how different countries, or, you know, not even different countries, different states
Yeah.
actually treat persons with disability, and particularly FASD. It really differs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What was your experience of that?
I think it's very strange. And I had to keep reminding myself. So I'm so used to, just saying, oh, I've FASD, and then getting ready to a 2 hour spiel about what is FASD and stuff. And people are like, yeah, okay, we know what that is. I'm like, wait, what? Where people do know what it is, to some sort of degree. Some know more, some know less. From what I've heard from discussions of other individuals and families and parents, getting a diagnosis is recognized as a disability, which means if you put it on forms of they have FASD, you're more likely to get resources of some kind, depending where you are in Canada to different degrees. Some places are better than others. Some places have a long way to go where it's not recognized at all. But for the most part, there's a lot more accommodations put into place. And it's more, the federal government recognizes it, which is, in the UK we're starting to get there, and in Ireland we are a long way off getting there, but we're trying. And it's starting to happen. So I think what is so awesome is the fact that people are recognizing FAT is a disability, that it's not going anywhere, and that support structures, resources need to be put into place for that,
And of course,
rather than it not being there.
once you understand the basics, let's say, of FASD, then you can do a deeper dive into it, can't you? You can
Yeah.
learn how to manage, you can learn how to respond to situations, and also you learn to understand and have a degree of compassion, because you're not going to respond with a negative. You're going to try and support that individual in that situation. And I think that has to be the key element. You know, when you mention, I know when we work on conferences and we're talking to representatives from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, America, all over the world, there are certain areas that have been 5 to 10 years ahead of us. And so therefore that state or that part of Canada have a greater understanding already, because it's the infrastructure, isn't it? It's already been set up. That's where we need to be. We're
Definitely.
We're getting there, but it's not nearly fast enough.
Yeah. And, you know, so in British Columbia, there's FASD key workers that are for every family who needs one. And actually having a key worker makes so much of a difference. And it's a scheme I'd love to see kind of taking place everywhere, because it really does make such a difference, especially when they're FASD informed.
So tell me, how does it make a difference? You know, there will be people on here that will go, okay, I love this idea. How would that work?
So from my understanding, and I'm sure I'm going to have Canadians correcting me on how it works, so I'm going to look forward to this one. A key worker works with the family of what do they need? What does the family need to support this individual? But also, what does the individual need to be able to be supported? It's very much a whole family. And what a key worker can then do is go and get services for the family, for schools. So very often, you know, we talk to parents and very often they have to go into schools and fight alone. Whereas if you have a caseworker, you have someone who's in your corner, who will also have the knowledge of, well, actually, they're entitled to this, or actually, this is what they need, so this is how we're going to do it. And I think sometimes just having parents who know they have someone in their corner can make all the difference.
100%.
Because it's a lonely place to have to be, to fight always on your own.
And, you know, with the nice quality standards that came out a few years back, the management plan, we keep beating on about this management plan. The management plan is the support network, that scaffolding that supports that individual throughout their lifetime. And of course, those assessments need to be continually updated. But who manages the management plan? That's the question that we have, and we are throwing out there constantly. It's interesting about the key workers because, you know, obviously this is an example of what is working in that area. So very interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. So tell me about, what have you got left? What are you doing next? Because you're staying out there longer than you planned, haven't you? Your savings will be diminishing rapidly.
Yes, my poor funds are diminishing. I've extended my stay for another 3 months. So I will be back. I promise I'll be back in October. So I'll be back on normal time zones, which would be great. And I think for me, I want to just see as much as I can, but also meet as many people and in the FAC community, in the networks, because for so many years I've been doing a lot of work out here. I've done a lot of mentorship with people, so I'm actually getting to finally meet them in person. I have someone I'm meeting tomorrow for dinner who I mentored their daughter for the last 6 years. People who, you know, I've done webinars like this, who parents have then reached out to me and I've worked with them, who are like, no, we're going to come and meet you. We cannot wait. And really just embrace what it's like to have be in a country where a disability is recognized, where I don't have to do my 5-hour spiel of what FAC is and why I need this, or why, you know, I'm not in the mood to go socializing this week or whatever. And it's been very healing for me to be in Canada. And it's been a very nice reset, which I really didn't realize how much I needed to re-energize myself. And to then come back and, have a lot of ideas of what would work for Ireland and the UK. And, I've had the honor of getting to meet so many great researchers and find out some research that, is new. So it would be awesome, like, hey, yeah, I now have research, so let's see how we can implement this. And it's really solidified that advocacy is definitely where I'm sticking. I'm not planning on leaving the FASD advocacy world anytime soon. But also when it comes to like the ALC, I have so many amazing ideas that I really just want to run with. And Jan's like, you got to learn to walk first, Maggie. Maggie, walk first. But I really want to get stuck into some of those projects, which I'm really excited to do. So yes, I'm staying longer, but it's definitely going to be very FASD orientated. And you never know, I might do a few more flights here and there, depending on if I get invited to.
Absolutely. Well, I know the very first question when you came on earlier, when we just met up again for at the beginning, my first question was, how are you? How are you?
Oh, yes.
Because all the time, the travels and everything, I've got to say, you're vivacious. You are absolutely loving this. And I think a big part of that is you've said it all tonight, is about people recognizing you feeling justified in many ways about understanding yourself, understanding your community, understanding your place in society and the world and what you have to offer. That's a big, big thing to understand, and actually be able to embrace that, hold that and go, do you know what? Yes, I'm ready for the world. And that's exactly what you've done. And, it's been so nice to see that it's been appreciated and acknowledged for you. I'm absolutely delighted for you and your family. May I just add as well, we've put up our June training sessions, that we've put 3 dates for our June training sessions on understanding FASD. And what we do, it's a 2-hour session where we have a basic understanding of FASD, and then we do a deeper dive into understanding what it's like to live with FASD. And Maggie May attends those and will be presenting for us on those as well, where we talk about many of the key areas that really impact Maggie May on her daily life, and what strategies and resources she uses to be able to manage her life more effectively. So if you want to have a look at those, go on to our Eventbrite page as well and sign up to those. We've also got them on our website. If you'd like to send Maggie May a message, by all means, follow her on all her social media platforms, because she's building a great following, and share her posts as well, because I think her advocacy is not just about the work that she's doing, it's about the work that we can do to promote her as well. Maggie May, it's been a pleasure as always. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Look after yourself.
Thank you.
And
you too.
Best of luck with all that you're doing. We're really proud of you. Amazing.
Thank
you all for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you very much. All the very best. Good night.